My son was in terrible pain and needed a kidney. Mine. My daughter-in-law looked me straight in the eye and said, "It's your duty. You're his mother." The doctor was already preparing me for surgery when suddenly my 9-year-old grandson ran into the room and shouted, "Grandma, I'll tell the truth about why my dad really needs your kidney." Everyone froze. I'm lying on the cold metal of the operating table. The bright surgical light is almost blinding, and my whole body feels stiff, not from the cold, but from a heavy choking fear. The steady beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor feels like a hammer in my ears. I can hear everything. The clinking of metal instruments. The nurse sorting through supplies. Dr. Evans flipping through my chart. Even the faint whispers coming from behind the glass where my daughter-in-law, Rebecca, stands with her parents. I force my eyes toward the glass. There she is, arms crossed, jaw tight, staring at me without blinking. She's whispering to her parents, but her eyes stay locked on me, almost commanding me. Sign it. Do it. Don't you dare hesitate. I already signed the consent form, my shaky name committing me to give my kidney to my son Adam. That paper is probably sitting on the doctor's desk right now. A nurse holds a syringe of anesthesia, the liquid glistening under the lights. I try to breathe deeply, but my chest feels heavy as stone. I think of Adam, my firstborn, the boy I raised with every ounce of strength I had. He's weak, lying in the next room, waiting for my kidney to save him. This is the right thing to do, I tell myself. I'm his mother. I have to. But deep inside me, something feels wrong. A hollow ache, a nameless fear I can't explain. Then the door slams open. A burst of cold air sweeps through the room, rattling the metal tray of instruments. Everything stops. Even the air feels still. I open my eyes and try to lift my head against the straps. It's Mario, my grandson. Breathless, muddy sneakers, rumpled school clothes. A nurse rushes in behind him, panicked. "Sweetheart, you can't be in here. Stop." But he doesn't stop. He runs straight to me, his big brown eyes filled with fear, and something else. Determination. "Grandma," he says, his voice trembling. "I have to tell everyone why my dad really needs your kidney." Silence. The heart monitor sounds louder and louder. A doctor drops a pair of forceps, metal hitting the floor with a sharp clang. I stare at Mario, the little boy I rocked to sleep and read stories to. He's holding an old cell phone, his hands shaking. What does he know? Why would he say something like that? My heart races so hard I can feel it in my throat. I want to speak, to ask him, but my voice won't come out. Dr. Evans raises his hand. "Everyone stop," he orders. "Whatever you have to say it now." His eyes move from me to Mario. Behind the glass, Rebecca pounds on the door so hard the frame vibrates. "Don't listen to him." Rebecca's voice slices through the room, high and panicked. "He's just a kid. He doesn't know what he's talking about." But her eyes are no longer cold and sharp. They're trembling. Like she knows a secret is about to come out. Mario still doesn't look at his mother. He only looks at me, tight grip on that old cell phone, knuckles turning white. He takes a deep breath, gathering more courage than any 9-year-old should ever need. I want to sit up, to hold him, to tell him everything will be okay. But I can't move. I can only watch. And in his little eyes, I see something painful, something true. For a moment, the whole room disappears, and my mind slips back into the past. Back to when I still believed my family was held together by love and trust. I see my old house in Chicago. The smell of disinfectant everywhere. It became such a normal part of my life that I stopped noticing it. I'm 67 now, but some days I feel much older. Life has weighed on me for a long time. My husband, Joe, has been bedridden for over 10 years. His wheelchair squeaks every time I push him into the yard for some fresh air. He barely speaks anymore, just stares off, lost somewhere I can't reach. One day, I held his hand and asked softly, "Joe, are you tired of this life?" He just blinked. No answer. Maybe he didn't understand. Maybe I just needed to say it out loud. That house was my world. The place I raised my two sons, Adam and Brandon. I worked myself to the bone for them. I woke at dawn to sell vegetables at the market. I sewed clothes in the afternoons. At night, I mended shirts until midnight so I could deliver them on time. My hands became rough and cracked. My nails were always dirty from the market. But I never complained. All I wanted was for my boys to have a better life than mine. Adam, my oldest, was always my pride. Strong. Tall. Came home from construction work covered in dust but laughing that big laugh of his. But then he started changing. First he was just tired. Then paler. I grabbed him almost begging. Adam, sweetheart, what's wrong? Tell me. But he only gave me a weak smile. Mom, don't worry. It's probably just the hard work. Rebecca, my daughter-in-law, came into our lives like a warm breeze at first. Beautiful, soft-spoken, attentive. She took care of Adam so gently, bringing him medicine, watching his meals, timing his pills exactly. Neighbors would tell me, Mrs. Jones, you're lucky to have such a good daughter-in-law. And I believed it. Whenever I saw her feeding Adam a bowl of soup, I told myself everything was fine, he was in good hands. But sometimes I caught a look in her eyes, cold, calculating, like she was thinking about something she didn't want me to know. One night, I saw her outside on the phone, whispering fast. Don't worry, she said. Everything is going according to the plan. I stepped out and asked, Rebecca, who are you calling so late? She jumped and forced a laugh. Just a friend, Mom. Go back to sleep. Brandon, my younger son, was different. Quiet. Steady. Always helping, always watching. He's 26 and lives just a few blocks away. Works as a plumber and electrician. Every time he visited he brought something, fresh oranges, warm bread, whatever he could afford. He'd fix my squeaky ceiling fan, change a burnt-out bulb, patch up whatever was falling apart. One day he looked at me and muttered, Mom, don't work yourself into the ground. I don't want to see you exhausted. I just waved him off. I'm fine, Brandon. Worry about your brother. He needs you more. But Brandon didn't agree. His eyes were full of worry. And little Mario, my grandson, was the joy in those heavy days. He's 9, always showing up with his backpack bouncing against his shoulders. He'd sit in the backyard, playing with the plastic cars I'd bought him at a flea market. He loved telling me stories, childish, innocent ones, but sometimes his words chilled me. Once he whispered, Grandma, I heard Mom on the phone last night. She said something about medicine, but I didn't understand. I smiled and brushed his hair. I'm sure she was talking to the doctor about your daddy. Don't worry, sweetheart. But even then, something deep inside me felt uneasy. But inside me, a little seed of worry had already started growing. And then one afternoon everything changed. I was in the kitchen fixing dinner. The warm smell of toasted rice filled the air. Rebecca walked in without saying hello, without even a smile. She just stood there with her arms crossed. Her voice was sharp enough to cut through the room. Mom, the doctor says only your kidney is a match. It's your responsibility. You have to save him. I froze. The spoon slipped from my hand and hit the pan with a dull clang. I looked at her, searching for the smallest bit of warmth, but all I saw was cold determination, almost a demand. Rebecca, I whispered, my throat dry. You know I'll do anything for Adam. She nodded, as if that's all she needed, and walked away. Not 10 minutes later, her parents came in. No knock, no greeting. They just walked into my home like it belonged to them. They sat down at my dining table and said together, That's right. A mother's duty is something you can't run from. This whole family depends on you now. I stood there with the spoon still in my hand, feeling like the walls were closing in. Adam sat nearby, propped up in a chair. He was so thin, I barely recognized him. He reached out and grabbed my hand. His was ice cold. Mom, he whispered. I trust you'll save me. I looked into his tired eyes, the same eyes that sparkled when he was little. Now they held nothing but exhaustion and pleading. I nodded quietly. Suddenly the room felt too small. The smell of Joe's medicinal herbs boiling in the corner made it hard to breathe. That night, I took Joe his bowl of soup like I always did. The squeak of his wheelchair on the concrete floor reminded me that I was holding up this entire family, piece by piece. I set the bowl in front of him and looked at him. He only sighed, silent, motionless, like a shadow. I wanted to ask him if I was doing the right thing, but he wasn't in a place to answer me anymore. I went out to the backyard. Mario was playing with his little car. He looked up at me, bright eyes but full of doubt. "Grandma," he asked softly, "what if someone gets sick because another person is giving them medicine?" I stopped cold. My heart skipped. "Why do you ask that, sweetheart?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. But Mario lowered his head and kept pushing his car. No answer. I didn't know then, but I was standing at the edge of a cliff, and just a few more steps would send me falling. I still woke up early. Still went to the market to sell my vegetables and oranges. Still sat under the dim lamp sewing clothes. But my heart was no longer at peace. Every stitch I made came with a question. Am I doing the right thing? Do I really have to sacrifice myself like this? But then I'd see Adam's tired eyes, hear Rebecca's sharp voice, feel her parents' accusing stares, and all my doubts would tighten around my throat. The next morning, before the sun fully rose, Rebecca was already at my door. I had just made tea. The scent of spearmint was still drifting through the house when she walked in. No knock, no greeting. "Mom," she said, firm and cold. "The doctor says there isn't much time left. If you keep hesitating, he could be in danger." She slapped a stack of medical papers onto the table. Pages full of numbers and signatures I couldn't make sense of. She pointed to each line like she was reading to a child. "It says clearly you're the only match. No one else can save him." I stood there holding the teapot. The hot water burned my fingers, but I barely felt it. I picked up the broom and began sweeping, anything to avoid her stare. "I heard you," I murmured. "I'll do everything for Adam." But inside, a heavy rock settled in my chest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. The broom scraped across the concrete floor, a sad, lonely rhythm. But Rebecca stayed there, watching me, waiting for me to say it again, to promise I wouldn't dare refuse. When she finally left, I sat down and covered my face with my hands. I thought of Adam as a little boy, running after me at the market, tugging. Could I really let him go? But every time I thought of giving up my kidney, a deeper fear tightened inside me. Not fear of the surgery, but fear of a darkness I couldn't understand. That night, Rebecca's parents came again. They brought fruit, mangoes, oranges, but they left the basket on the table like it was nothing. Then they sat in the best chairs in the living room, as if they owned the place. Mr. Collins cleared his throat. "In my day, parents sacrificed everything for their children. My grandmother sold her land to save her son. Now it's your turn." Mrs. Peterson nodded sharply. "If you refuse, this family's honor will be ruined. What will the neighbors say? That you don't love your son?" I sat there gripping the table, feeling trapped. I wanted to ask why all of this was on my shoulders, but the words wouldn't come. I lowered my head and nodded, like a machine. Dinner that night felt like a funeral. Rebecca placed a piece of chicken on my plate with a fake smile. "Mom, save your strength for the surgery." I looked at my plate, but I couldn't swallow. Adam sat across from me, pale, weak. He tried to smile. "Mom, I know you'll save me, just like you always have." His words cut me open. I remembered all those nights I sat by his bed during fevers. All the times I bandaged his scrapes. All the times he needed me. I was always there. But this time, something felt terribly wrong. I was always the kind of mother who would do anything for her children. But this time, I don't know why, I felt scared. Brandon sat at the corner of the table like a shadow. He didn't touch his food. He just stirred his soup and kept staring at Rebecca. The look he gave her, I wanted to ask him what he was thinking, but I didn't dare. The air in that room felt heavy. The only sound was the clinking of spoons, loud as hammers on my conscience. After dinner, Rebecca rushed to take Adam's plate to the kitchen. She didn't let anyone help. She washed it quickly, but she checked it so carefully, like she was afraid someone might find something on it. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in my old bed listening to the tick-tock of the wall clock. Every second reminded me that Adam was running out of time. I got up for a glass of water, and as I walked down the hallway, I heard whispers from Adam and Rebecca's room. I froze in the dark. Rebecca's voice was low but clear. After the transplant, we'll have all the data. Don't worry, she won't dare refuse. My heart pounded so hard I had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. Data? What were they talking about? I wanted to knock on the door, but right then Rebecca opened it. She jumped when she saw me, then gave me a fake smile. Still up, Mom? I was just asking about his medicine. I nodded and walked away, but it felt like needles were stuck in my chest. Nothing about her smile felt real. The next few days were like walking in a fog. I did my usual chores, selling at the market, sewing clothes, feeding my husband Joe, but everything felt empty. Rebecca's words and Adam's tired eyes stayed in my mind and didn't let me rest. Then one afternoon, my grandson Mario came over. He was 9, his sneakers muddy and his hands still sticky from paint at school. He sat on the floor with that little plastic car I bought him last year. But he didn't smile. He pushed the car back and forth with a lost look. Suddenly he raised his head. "Grandma," he said softly, "what if my dad isn't sick because of life? What if someone is giving him medicine on purpose?" I almost dropped the spoon I was holding. "Why do you say that, sweetheart?" I tried to keep my voice calm, but my heart was racing. Mario didn't answer at first. He looked down, rolling his car, his little hand clenched tight. I wanted to hug him, to protect him from even thinking such a terrible thing. "You're just worrying too much," I finally said, trying to smile. "Your dad is sick and the doctors are helping him." But my smile felt fake, and he saw right through it. He grabbed his backpack and quietly ran home. His question hit my heart like a stone dropped into still water, spreading doubt everywhere. Later that day, Brandon came to fix the kitchen light. When he finished, he looked at me with a seriousness I'd never seen in him. "Mom," he whispered, "something is wrong with Rebecca. I saw some unmarked pill bottles in Adam's cabinet. She hides them." The plate slipped from my hands and water splashed on my blouse. "What are you saying?" My voice cracked. Brandon stepped closer. "Mom, I don't think Adam's illness is natural. I think someone—" He couldn't finish. But I understood anyway. Mario's words echoed in my head. What if someone is giving him medicine? I tried to push the thought away, but it held on to me like a shadow. The next afternoon, I brought soup to Adam at the hospital. The white walls, the disinfectant smell, it all felt suffocating. Adam was pale, thin, with needles in both arms, but he still tried to smile at me. When I lifted the spoon to give him his soup, I noticed Rebecca beside the bed, holding a glass of water. She slipped a strange-colored pill into the glass, so quickly anyone else would have missed it. But I saw it. She jumped when I walked in, spilling water on the floor. "What pill is that, Rebecca?" I asked carefully. She forced a smile. "It's just a supplement for his kidney." "The doctor prescribed it," Rebecca said with a stiff smile. I nodded, but a cold shiver went through me. After Adam finished eating, I went to find the on-call doctor, a middle-aged man with thick glasses. "Doctor," I asked, my voice shaking, "did you prescribe a new kidney supplement for my son?" He looked surprised and checked the chart. "No, we haven't added anything. His current medication is enough." I froze. Rebecca had lied. What was that pill? Why hide it? That evening, Mario came to my house again. But this time he didn't play. He sat quietly on a chair, pulled out an old phone with a cracked screen, and spoke in a low voice. "Grandma, I want you to listen to this." He tapped the screen and handed it to me. A recording played. Rebecca's voice, whispering, Clear as day. After the transplant, the test results will be perfect. Don't worry, she won't dare refuse. The phone slipped from my hands. I looked at Mario, my sweet little grandson, and his eyes were red, scared. I found this on my mom's old phone, he said, voice unsteady. I don't know what it means, but I thought you should know. I pulled him close. You're so brave, sweetheart, I whispered, though inside I felt like everything was collapsing. Test results. Data. What was she talking about? Suddenly all the moments from the past days lined up in my mind. The mysterious, piece by piece, they were forming a picture I didn't want to face. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my quiet house, listening to the clock ticking, each second reminding me that Adam was running out of time. The next morning, I went back to the hospital with a plastic container of hot food. Adam's room felt colder than ever. He looked pale, his eyes sunken, but he still tried to smile. Mom, you're here early, he whispered. I tried to smile back, but my heart was shaking. Rebecca was already there, sitting by his bed, staring at the floor as if she owned the place. On the nightstand, half hidden under a crumpled napkin, I noticed a small white pill bottle with strange blue pills inside. No label. I picked it up. What medicine is this, Rebecca? She jumped like she'd been burned and snatched the bottle from my hand. They're just vitamins, Mom, she said with a fake smile. The doctor prescribed them. But I knew she was lying. Everything about her felt wrong. I sat beside Adam, feeding him, but my mind kept drifting to Rebecca's lies, the pills Brandon saw, and Mario's heartbreaking question. What if someone is giving him medicine? I wanted to confront her, to scream the truth out of her. But I was terrified that if I pushed too hard, I'd lose Adam forever. Around noon, Brandon walked in, his hands still stained with grease from work. He quietly watched Rebecca talking with a nurse out in the hallway. After she left, Brandon came to me and pulled a small plastic bag from his backpack. Mom, look at this. On his phone were blurry photos, but clear enough to stop my breath. Rebecca in the hospital parking lot, handing a small bag to a man. I stared at the photos, my hands shaking. Brandon, are you sure? Did you hear what they said? No, he whispered. But I saw her give him a bag of medicine, and he paid her. Mom, something is wrong. I saw the fear and anger in his eyes, and I knew he wasn't imagining things. But I still didn't want to believe the truth that was staring me in the face. That afternoon, when I got home, Mario was waiting again. He sat quietly, hugging his backpack. Grandma, I want you to hear something else. He pulled out the same old phone, hands trembling. Rebecca's voice filled the room again. After the transplant, the data will be complete. Don't worry, that old woman won't dare refuse. This result is worth 100 times more. I felt my whole body go cold. Mario's eyes were red as he whispered, I found it on my mom's phone. I don't understand it, but I thought you should know. I hugged him tightly as tears ran down my face. Adam. The pills. The photos. The recordings. Rebecca's lies. Each piece fell into place, forming a dark reality I didn't want to accept. What was Rebecca doing? What data? What results? And who was the old woman she thought wouldn't dare refuse? For the first time in my life, I felt betrayed, not just by Rebecca, but by my own hope, my own trust and family. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. I sat in my silent house, listening to ambulance sirens passing by, their red and blue lights flashing across my window like cuts across my heart. I kept thinking about Adam, how he was getting weaker every single day. I thought about the strange pills, the lies Rebecca's whispering, Brandon's worried eyes, and that little boy Mario, who had been brave enough to bring me the truth. I felt like my head was going to explode. Part of me wanted to run to the hospital, grab Rebecca by the shoulders, and demand answers. But another part of me was terrified. Terrified that the truth was even worse than what I was imagining. I walked out to the backyard and stared at the moon. I thought of my husband, Joe, sitting silently in his wheelchair, unable to help me, unable to tell me what to do. I felt completely alone with the pieces of a truth that was slowly showing itself. The next morning, I woke up feeling like the whole world was pressing on my chest. Even the birds in the backyard, which usually brought me peace, sounded sharp and painful. Today was the day the hospital would make the final decision about Adam's kidney transplant. The recording, the photos, the unlabeled bottle, Brandon's fear, Mario's trembling voice, they all swirled in my head. But I didn't want to look too closely at any of it. I just wanted my boy to live, even if it meant giving him part of my own body. At noon, the hospital called me in. I sat in a small meeting room while Dr. Evans spread out pages filled with numbers and charts I didn't understand. "Mrs. Jones," he said, steady and serious, "you are the most compatible donor for Adam. If we don't do the surgery soon, his life will be in danger." My hands clutched the edge of my blouse. My head felt like it was buzzing. "I understand," I whispered. He looked at me gently. "Do you need more time to think?" I shook my head. Not because I was sure, but because that night, I brought the whole family to my small house. The living room felt tight and heavy, even with the little teapot steaming on the table. The smell of spearmint couldn't soften the tension. Rebecca's parents sat in the best two chairs, like they owned the place. Rebecca sat beside them, watching me out of the corner of her eye. Adam lay weakly on the couch. Brandon leaned against the wall, fists clenched, jaw tight. Little Mario sat in the corner hugging his backpack, his face full of worry. My hands trembled as I set the teapot down. "I've made my decision," I said. "I'm going to donate my kidney to Adam." The room broke open. Mrs. Peterson clapped loudly. "That's a real mother," she said sharply. "I knew you wouldn't disappoint us." Rebecca covered her face, crying, but I saw the way her fists tightened, like she was performing for the room. "Oh, Mom," she said. "I knew you loved him most. Adam whispered, Mom, I owe you my life." His voice sounded so small and weak it tore something inside me. Then Brandon slammed his hand on the table. The cups rattled. "No," he shouted. "Mom, don't do this. You're walking right into her plan. She's using you, and using Adam too." Rebecca jumped up, pointing at him. "How dare you accuse me? I do everything for my husband." But Brandon didn't back down. "What about the bottles? And the late-night calls?" he said. "Mom, they're lying to you." I wanted to speak. I wanted to tell Brandon to calm down, but no words came. My throat closed. Something inside me sank deeper and deeper. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone at my small wooden table. The old oil lamp flickered while I wrote my will. I left the house to Brandon, and a few small things to Mario. Each word felt like carving into my heart. I didn't know if I'd survive the surgery, but I wanted to leave something behind for the ones who truly loved me. Joe sat quietly in his wheelchair, his eyes watching me. I saw a tear fall down his cheek. "Joe, I have to do this," I whispered. "It's for Adam." He couldn't speak. He just blinked as another tear slid down. I folded the will and placed it in the wooden box where I kept my wedding memories. Outside, the rain started pouring, mixing with the sound of my own sobbing. Early in the morning, before sunrise, I was lying on a gurney inside an ambulance. I held a small fabric bag with a change of clothes and my old embroidered handkerchief, the one from my wedding day. The siren wailed, but I barely noticed. The streetlights outside looked blurred through my tired eyes. Today was the day. I had made my choice. I had written my will. I had accepted my fate. When we reached the hospital, a nurse pushed my gurney down a long hallway. The wheels screeched loudly, echoing in my skull. Rebecca walked behind me, her steps soft but full of authority. "Don't worry, Mom," she whispered. "After the surgery, everything will be fine." But when I glanced at her, I saw something else, something like triumph flashing in her eyes. It scared me more than anything. Her parents were already waiting at reception, dressed as if they were attending a celebration instead of a dangerous surgery. Mrs. Peterson laughed loudly, thanking the doctors with exaggerated smiles. I clutched my little fabric bag and felt like a stranger in my own life. They let me see Adam before they took me in. His face looked so pale, so tired. "Mom, thank you," he whispered. I held his cold hand and felt tears burning in my eyes. "Adam, I'll do everything I can," I whispered, though fear twisted in my stomach. Suddenly, the door burst open. Brandon rushed in, sweaty, dirty from work, breathing hard, like he had run all the way there. Brandon grabbed my shoulders, his hands shaking. "Mom, please don't do this," he begged. "Something isn't right. I can feel it." His eyes were red with worry and anger. I wanted to tell him that I had already made up my mind, that I couldn't let Adam die, but the words wouldn't leave my mouth. Instead, I simply placed my hand over his and gave it a gentle squeeze. Then the nurse pulled me away. I heard Brandon calling after me, "Mom, listen to me." But I didn't dare turn around. I knew if I looked into his eyes, I'd break. The hospital hallway felt colder than ever. The sharp smell of disinfectant made my stomach turn. A voice came over the loudspeaker. "Operating room 3, prepare for kidney transplant." My heart dropped. They led me to a small room and helped me into a thin blue gown. Someone placed a cap and mask on me. When I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the tired woman staring back, pale, hollow-eyed, afraid. "Mary," I whispered to my reflection. "Are you sure about this?" But then Adam's weak smile came to mind, and I took a deep breath and kept walking. As they pushed me down the hall, I spotted Rebecca and Mrs. Peterson standing by a glass window with a man wearing a black jacket and a cap pulled low over his eyes, the same man from the photo Brandon showed me. I watched Rebecca hand him an envelope. He slipped it into his pocket quickly, almost nervously. A cold shiver ran through me. What was in that envelope? Why here? Why now? Before I could take another step, the nurse pulled me into the operating room. Inside, the bright white lights were blinding. Dr. Evans stood over me, calm but serious. "We're ready, Mrs. Jones. Try to relax." I nodded, though my whole body felt tight as a drum. They stuck cold electrodes to my chest, and the beeping from the heart monitor echoed through the room. Beep, 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 each one sounding like a warning. Through the glass window, I saw Rebecca again. She tapped the glass and motioned toward the papers the nurse was holding. She wanted me to sign. My hand trembled as I took the pen. My signature dragged across the page, messy and faint. It felt like I was signing away my life. I thought of the will I had written just hours earlier, of Brandon, of little Mario, and wondered if this would be the last time I was awake. The nurse lifted the syringe of anesthesia. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I closed my eyes. Images flashed. Adam lying weak in his bed, Brandon begging me to stop, Mario's frightened little face, Rebecca's cold stare. And then the bottle, the recording, the man in the cap. I wanted to scream stop, but my voice stayed trapped in my throat. Just as the needle touched my arm, a loud crash shook the room. The door flew open so hard it slammed into the wall. Doctors gasped. Nurses dropped what they were holding. And then, out of breath and covered in mud, little Mario ran in like a storm. His uniform wrinkled, his small chest rising and falling as he tried to breathe. Mario rushed into the operating room clutching that old phone with the cracked screen like it was the most precious thing he owned. A nurse was running behind him shouting, "Honey, you can't be in here. Stop." But Mario didn't stop. He ran straight to me, his eyes wide with fear, but there was something fierce in them too, something no child his age should ever have to feel. "Grandma," he said, his voice shaking but strong enough to silence the entire room, "I have to tell everyone why my dad really needs your kidney." The words hit me like a blow. Every sound vanished except the loud, steady beep of the heart monitor beside me. A doctor dropped a pair of surgical forceps. The metal clattered against the floor so loudly it made me jump. Dr. Evans raised his hand and said calmly, "Let the boy speak." Through the glass window, Rebecca started pounding on the door. "Don't listen to him," she screamed, her voice sharp and panicked. "He's just a child." But her face, it wasn't cold anymore. It was terrified. Mario stepped closer and, with his small trembling hands, pressed play on the phone. Rebecca's whispered voice filled the room. "After the transplant, the test results will be perfect. Don't worry, that old woman won't dare refuse." I felt the blood drain from my body. Dr. Evans swung toward me, his eyes wide. "Stop everything," he ordered. "Stop all preparations immediately." A nurse pulled the syringe away at once. Everyone froze. Rebecca let out a high-pitched scream. It's not true. He's lying. He's being manipulated. But even she sounded like she didn't believe herself anymore. Mario burst into tears then, but he still held that phone tight. I have a video too, he choked out. It's my mom and Grandma Peterson talking about selling medicine. He played it. Rebecca and Mrs. Peterson appeared on the shaky screen, standing in the parking lot, handing an envelope to the same man from the photos. Mrs. Peterson's voice was clear. After this operation, we'll have enough data to sell the medicine abroad. My chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. Horror washed over me. Horror for the truth I had refused to face. But beneath it, a strange, painful relief, because now I didn't have to pretend anymore. Suddenly Brandon burst in from the hallway. His face was red, his jaw clenched. Enough, he shouted. He slammed his hand against the door. You poisoned him. You thought we wouldn't notice. Before anyone could move, Brandon raised his hand and slapped Rebecca. The sharp sound echoed through the hallway. Mrs. Peterson screamed, "How dare you hit my daughter?" Brandon pointed at Rebecca, his voice shaking with rage. What have you been giving him? What did you do to my brother? Rebecca held her cheek, tears running down her face, but there was no guilt in her eyes. Only fear. You're all crazy, she screamed. She turned toward the surgeon. Don't listen to them. They're lying. But Dr. Evans didn't even look at her. His face had turned pale. This surgery is over, he said quietly. This is now a criminal investigation. Call the police. A nurse ran out. Others stood frozen, unsure what to do. I lay there, tears sliding down my face. I looked at Mario, my brave grandson who charged into an operating room to save me. I looked at Brandon, my youngest boy who had been shouting the truth before anyone would listen. And I thought of Adam, my son, lying in another room, not knowing his own wife had betrayed him. The truth filled the room like a storm, loud, undeniable, tearing everything apart. Nurses looked helpless. Doctors whispered. Even the bright lights felt colder. Rebecca, but Mr. Collins and Mrs. Peterson said nothing. They both stood stiff and silent, their faces drained of color. Then Mrs. Peterson lifted her cane and slammed it against the floor. Crack! The sound echoing through the room as she pointed directly at me. When she yelled, "You made your grandson lie about me, you evil old woman." It felt like someone stabbed me straight in the heart. I wanted to shout back, to tell her I never manipulated anyone, that it was her daughter who had betrayed my family. But my throat closed up. I couldn't get a word out. I just stood there, feeling cornered and crushed, like all my years of sacrifice meant nothing. Mr. Collins, Rebecca's father, leaned toward a doctor he knew and whispered fast, "Please just continue the surgery. We'll handle the rest. We just need this to end." I saw him slip an envelope into the doctor's hand. But Dr. Evans walked over immediately, his voice cold and sharp. "The law decides here, not money." He snatched the envelope, threw it on the floor and told a nurse, "Close the doors. No one leaves. I'm calling hospital administration." His footsteps echoed like the whole situation had finally blown apart. Suddenly, Brandon rushed in from the hallway, ignoring the nurses trying to stop him. He grabbed my shoulders, his eyes red and full of panic. "Mom, don't donate your kidney. This was their plan all along. She poisoned my brother. Don't you see it?" His voice shook with rage and pain. I looked into his eyes and saw my son begging me to save myself. I wanted to comfort him, to tell him everything would be all right. But I was frozen. My whole world felt like it was collapsing. From the prep room next door, I heard Adam's weak, confused voice. "What's happening? Why is everyone arguing?" He tried to sit up, struggling to breathe, the force shaking in his arm. Hearing him broke my heart. He didn't know a thing. He didn't know that the woman he loved had dragged our whole family into something dark and cruel. I wanted to run to him, but I couldn't move. Tears just kept falling. Mario stood beside me crying too, but he still lifted his phone with a trembling hand. "I have another video," he said. "This is when my mom gives the medicines to my grandparents." He played it. And on the screen, there she was, Rebecca and Mrs. Peterson, meeting with a man in the parking lot. Mrs. Peterson's voice came through cold as stone. If the transplant works, we can sell the medicine overseas. With that money, we can wash. Mrs. Peterson waved her cane at me, shouting, "Traitor! You destroyed this family." But even her voice cracked. She knew it was over. Rebecca twisted and fought, yelling, "Let me go. I didn't do anything wrong." But her words sounded empty now, desperate. I lay there on the operating table, cold and trembling, watching the truth finally come out. When the police took them away, Rebecca's screams echoed down the hallway. I was helping science. No one understands me. But no one answered her. The same people who once walked into my home acting superior were now being escorted out with their heads down. I felt frozen, but not from fear anymore. A strange sense of relief washed over me, like a cage around my life had finally opened. Dr. Evans came over, his face serious but softer now. "Mrs. Jones," he said gently, "we've canceled the surgery. We'll move Adam to a different treatment, dialysis and new medications. You risked your health preparing for this, but today, you saved your son's life, and your own dignity." Tears kept falling, but I didn't wipe them away. "Thank you, doctor," I whispered. I didn't know if I'd truly saved my dignity, but for the first time in a long, long while, I felt like I could finally breathe. Brandon ran to me and helped me sit up. He held my hand so tightly, like he was afraid to lose me. His eyes were steady, but full of hurt. "You still have me, Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm going to protect you from now on. I promise." I squeezed his hand, feeling the warmth of his rough, grease-stained fingers. When I looked at him, I saw the strength of a son who would carry the whole world just to keep his mother safe. "You're my pride, son," I whispered, and the tears came again. Brandon didn't say another word. He just pulled me into a tight hug. In that hug, I found a bit of comfort in the middle of the ruins my family had become. Adam was moved to a recovery room. When I walked in, he was lying there pale, the IV still hooked to his arms. He looked at me with red, tired eyes and asked softly, "Mom, is it true? Did my wife really do all this to hurt me?" His question stabbed straight into my heart. I sat on the bed beside him and wrapped my arms around him. My tears soaked his hospital gown. "Oh, Adam, my son," I said, barely able to speak. "I don't know how all this began, but I promise, I won't let anyone hurt you again." Adam lowered his head, and tears rolled down his thin cheeks. "Mom, I was wrong," he whispered. "I didn't protect you. I let you suffer too much." I held him even tighter. For a moment, it felt like it was just the two of us in the world, clinging to each other after the storm had finally passed. Over the next days, the newspapers exploded with headlines. "Drug trafficking ring busted at local hospital." They wrote about a group of doctors and pharmacists, and how Rebecca, Mr. Collins, and Mrs. Peterson were at the center of it. They had tested illegal drugs on patients like Adam, using the kidney transplant as a cover to collect data for an international organization. Reading those words made me sick. I thought about all the meals Rebecca had served me, all her sweet smiles. Now I knew every bit of it was a lie. I thought of Adam, how he had suffered for months without knowing he was living with danger under his own roof. Adam began dialysis and new medications. Slowly, thank God, he started to improve. One afternoon he held my hand, lowered his head and said in a shaky voice, "Mom, I was blind. I trusted Rebecca. I almost let you lose everything." I gently stroked his hair, like I used to when he was a little boy. "Son, what matters is that you're still here. That's all I need." But in my heart, a scar had formed, not only from Rebecca's betrayal, but because I had let myself come so close to death without asking questions. I went back to my little house, where Joe was still sitting motionless in his wheelchair. I sat down beside him and told him everything. Mario's recording, the scene of Rebecca being handcuffed. I don't know if he understood all of it, but when I finished, I saw him blink. 2 tears rolled down his thin cheeks. I took his hand and squeezed it. For the first time in years, I felt a faint response from him. A weak squeeze, as if he were trying to say, "I understand." I cried, but not from pain. I cried because despite everything, I still had him. I still had my family. Mario became a little hero in our neighborhood. The day he came home, He ran straight to me, wrapped his small arms around my neck and whispered, "Grandma, I'm sorry it took me so long to speak up, but at least I got there in time to save you." I laughed through my tears and hugged him tightly, feeling the warmth of his small body. "You're the bravest person I know," I told him, ruffling his hair. Mario smiled, the first smile I had seen in days. When I looked into his eyes, I saw that his innocence was still there, though marked by all he had witnessed. I promised myself then that I would protect Mario, that I would give him a childhood no one could steal from him. That last night, I sat in my small room under the flickering light of the oil lamp. I opened my old diary and wrote the final lines. Blood doesn't always make you family. Sometimes it's the truth that shows you who truly deserves the name. I had lost a lot, but I had found myself. I closed the diary, put down the pen, and listened to the rain pattering on the backyard roof. A strange calm settled over me, as if the storm had passed, leaving the sky clear. I looked out the window at the pale moonlight shining across the backyard and knew this. Even if the road ahead was long, I would never again let myself be blinded. I had regained my own strength, and that was the most valuable thing no one could ever take from me. The story you've just heard has been changed in names and places to protect those involved. We're not telling it to judge anyone. We're telling it in the hope that someone will listen and reflect. How many mothers suffer in silence inside their own homes? I wonder, if you were in my place, what would you do? Would you stay silent to keep the peace? Or would you dare to face everything and reclaim your voice? Every story is like a candle. It can light the way for someone else. God bless. And I truly believe that courage always leads us to better days. Meanwhile, on the final screen, I leave you with two of the channel's most beloved stories. I'm sure they will surprise you.